In this video, we'll be replacing the outer tie rod end on this 2007 Mazda CX-9. It's going to be the same process for the first generation from 2007 to 2015. It'll also be the same process for the passenger side. It's going to be a 21 millimeter. We'll go ahead and take off our lug nuts now. Now if you want to, on either side, driver or passenger, when you're doing your tie rod end, if you want to turn your wheel, it'll give you a little bit more access to work in that area. So now what we're going to do is find our outer tie rod end ball joint here. We're going to remove our castle nut, but to do that we need to remove this cotter pin. So you should replace this cotter pin when you remove it, because removing it will mean you'll have to bend it. So it's a part you should replace every time you remove it. And your new tie rod end will come with a new cotter pin. Just go ahead and pull that straight out. Now our castle nut is going to be an 18 millimeter. Alright, so there's our castle nut. Now we're replacing our tie rod end. So we can hammer down here to separate our tie rod end. If we weren't replacing our outer and we were replacing only our inner, you'd want to be very careful about how you separate your tie rod end from your knuckle. You don't want to do any damage if you're not replacing. Sometimes what you can do is flip your castle nut around and actually hammer down on the bottom of the castle nut, or you can come in here and just hit the knuckle portion to separate the two. So now because we're replacing our tie rod end, we can go ahead and hammer down on our threaded portion here. So we're going to do that with a 5-pound sledge. There you go. So now to remove your tie rod end, what we're going to do is lock up our inner tie rod end with a 13 millimeter here. You'll see that there's a flat spot on both your inner and your outer. So we'll put a 13 millimeter there and a 22 millimeter back here. Now what we're looking to do is stop our inner from spinning while loosening our outer. Now once you have it loose, what you want to do is unscrew your outer while counting your full rotations outward. Just go ahead and count your rotations all the way out. So you have 20 and a half. So now we have our new outer tie rod end. We're going to angle the inner outwards just slightly so that we can take our outer and start to rotate it on. We're looking for a half turn here to catch. Whatever number you counted when you removed it, you want to reinstall the new one that number of turns in. Alright, so there's our 20 turns plus the half we started with. Now from here, what we're going to do is take our lock nut and tighten that down till it meets up with our outer tie rod end. Now this is stopping us from spinning our tie rod end in any further. Now from here, we can take our ball joint end of our tie rod and put it back into our knuckle. Now ideally what you want is your ball joint end here to be in the center of its travel. You don't want it too far in any direction. For this, we're going to need to just adjust it slightly. And we can push straight up. Now from here, we're going to put our castle nut on. We'll get the castle nut finger tight. Now that we have our outer tie rod end into the knuckle, we're going to go ahead and tighten down our castle nut. It's going to be 50 foot-pounds. Okay, what we're looking for is the hole to line up with one of the notches in the castle nut. So we're just going to continue a little bit more. There we go. We can go ahead and push our new cotter pin through. I'm actually going to push it through from the back and bend it over. Now moving up our outer tie rod end, we have our jam nut that we're going to have to tighten up. So the jam nut itself is going to be a 21 millimeter. And the tie rod end, you'll see a couple of flat spots here, are going to be a 22 millimeter. So we'll hold our tie rod end nice and parallel to the knuckle, and we'll tighten down our jam nut. Go ahead and put our wheel back on. And what I'll do here is I'll put a top and a bottom lug nut on, and I'll rock the rim back and forth onto that rotor face, try and get it as flush as possible on the back, and then I'll continue with the rest of the lug nuts. Once we have our lug nuts in, we'll come in and snug these down. We'll lower the vehicle on the ground so the wheel won't spin, and we'll torque them down. Now with the vehicle on the ground, we're going to go ahead and torque down our lug nuts. We're going to do that in a crisscross pattern. We're going to torque it down to 85 foot-pounds. After finishing this installation, it's important to have an alignment done on your vehicle.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.